Hi. Being a teacher, you are probably not so keen to debate monetary aspects. You care for the quality of education and think every penny invested in education is well spent. I agree. But sometimes it's good to be able to defend your educational strategies with return on investment. When politicians in Switzerland invested 30 million francs in 2000 in the project Virtual Campus to introduce e-learning at university level, they expected great savings. There was a fierce debate whether these were realistic expectations. This is why I believe it does make sense to think also about the cost that result from your design decisions. What would you say? Is it cheaper to develop and run a blended learning course or a similar conventional face-to-face course? After watching this video, you can explain the cost mechanic of blended versus online or face-to-face courses. You will differentiate the perspectives of all the stakeholders. You can use a calculation model to estimate the cost of your specific course. This presentation is based on the following books and on my own experiences with blended learning courses. So, what is the cost of a blended learning course? Here is a first naive attempt to answer this simple question. It depends. It costs always more than you expect. The Vice President for Distance Learning at the University of Phoenix explains, the most common myth is significant costs can be saved. The Director of Instructional Technology Programs at Sacramento County supports him by saying, the greatest single myth of distance learning is that it is less expensive. This all sounds sensible, but these answers are not really helpful. So let's take a closer look at the problem and ask some further questions. Who asks? A student? The provider? What do you mean by cost? Money? Time? Ecological impact? What is the time horizon? One course? A sequence of courses? And what do you mean by blended learning course? In short, we have to ask the question more precisely. Let's ask the question about the cost of a course from the point of view of a student. He will tell you what he considers as cost. First of all, the price of the course, travel and overnight expenses, loss of working hours, but very often he takes a blended learning format because of the flexibility of the learning arrangement, so she or he can reconcile the learning with other duties. A course provider, on the other hand, has a different perspective. He or she looks for the cost of developing a course, costs to hire personnel for learning support, or overhead like classroom or infrastructure, marketing. An employer who sends an employee for training is interested in the price of the course, but for him also travel and overnight expenses and loss of working hours. A politician will focus on the cost for training for the society as a whole, cost per student and degree, ecological cost, avoiding rush hours, for instance. In many calculations, hidden costs factors are overlooked. If you want to evaluate the cost of a course as a provider, check the following aspects. Pre-production, production costs, after then the post-production, infrastructure, overheads, and don't forget hidden costs like travel, loss of working hours, etc. It's crucial to decide whether to look for a single course or a sequence of courses. Let's look at some major pitfalls when estimating costs. Very often, costs are underestimated, especially development costs. You can also overestimate the cost of a course when you are not asking, what is the cost of no training? Very often, cost factors are overlooked. Learning support, loss of working hours. In one example study, it was shown that taking into account the hidden costs can change the picture altogether. When a superficial estimation showed much higher costs for the online version, the hidden costs were considerably lower. In a complete study, the face-to-face course was much more expensive. It also depends very much on what kind of media or delivery format we choose. Compare what it takes to develop 1 hour of learning when the course is delivered as a face-to-face course, 1 to 10 times as much, compared to a computer-based training for soft skills, 20 to 100 times. If you need to reduce costs, try to distribute the development costs on many courses. Replace face-to-face time with guided self-study. But most importantly, develop wraparound courses based on free resources on the internet. More often than not, blended learning is not introduced to reduce cost. The benefits are flexibility for teachers and learners, the combination of different learning modes, a good learner support, and most importantly, the good use of time. Estimating the cost of a course is a risky business. Working with a calculation model allows you to get a feeling for the cost mechanics. This will help you take more informed decisions when designing the course. Get the spreadsheet and play with the model. This simulation may not give accurate predictions, but playing with the model, you will develop an awareness that what factors are crucial. And don't forget, most input values are assumptions. Results are not meant to be absolutely accurate. They are, however, a good starting point for discussions. By adjusting the input values, you can play with the system. As I mentioned before, cost is just one factor in your decision to choose a blended course mode. But it's good to know on what element to keep an eye. Let me remind you what Rowntree said. Cost is rarely the decisive factor in choosing the delivery mode. Thank you.